All right, so today we're reading The Land of the Dead. And if you look at the box at the top of your page, you'll see a recap and a summary of what we've missed. Because again, your textbook has the abridged version of the epic. So it's kind of like last time on the Odyssey. So here's what happens. I'm going to summarize it for you, not necessarily read it word for word. But so after Odysseus and his men, they leave the Cyclops, they go to Aeolia. And if you look at your map in Odysseus's journey, in your flip book, you'll see a map of his journey and you can reference it there. But they leave the Cyclops and Odysseus and his men to sail to Aeolia, where they see King Aeolus. He is the god of the winds, and he wants to help Odysseus. So he bags up all the winds except the favorable west wind, which it sends Odysseus to the west, which is where Ithaca is. And so when Odysseus and his men get very, very close to Ithaca, they can see it in the distance. Odysseus has fallen asleep, and his men get curious, and they open the bag. And then once they open the bag of winds, the winds blow them all the way back to Aeolia, where King Aeolus is. And Odysseus basically goes back to Aeolus, and he's like, hey, dude, can you help me out? My men were dumb and opened this bag. And Aeolus is like, bro, you done be cursed by the gods. I can't help you out. You need to go on. And so he does. And then he sets sail for 7 days. And he and his men land in the land of the Lygastrionians, which is a race of cannibals. And so here, a lot of Odysseus's men are destroyed. All of Odysseus's ships are destroyed except for one, and that's going to be the ship that Odysseus is on. I kind of like to think of his ship as like the Black Pearl from the Pirates of the Caribbean. It's kind of indestructible. But they set sail for 7 days, and then the Lygastrionians, the cannibals, destroy his ships and his men. And then they leave with just Odysseus and his ship and his fleet of men. And then they get to a place called Aea, which is where the sorceress goddess Circe lives. And she changes all of his men into swine. But Odysseus cannot be turned into a swine. What's a swine? Yeah, it's a pig. So he can't be turned into a swine. He can't be turned into a pig because Hermes has given Odysseus a magic herb to keep him mortal and keep him human. And Circe is like, thinks that's really attractive. She's like, oh man, I can't turn him into a pig. Like, he must be special. And so Odysseus, he convinces her to turn his men back into mortals, and she does. And then they kind of hang around there for a while, and they lose their sense of purpose and journey. It's a nice place. Like, Circe has a good palace. She's got a lot of food. She's got a lot of wine and cheeses, which were big then. And so they kind of stay and they forget their sense of place and time. It's kind of like the Lotus Casino and Percy Jackson. And so Odysseus realizes he needs to leave, and Circe's like, hey, before you leave me and set on your journey, like, I have to tell you that you can figure out what the rest of your journey is going to be like if you go visit this dude named Tiresias in the underworld. There's only one problem with that, though, is like, ain't nobody got time to go to the underworld and actually make it back out alive. It was very unheard of. In fact, there's only 2 characters in Greek mythology that go into the underworld and make it out alive, and one's going to be Hercules, and the other one is Odysseus. And so Odysseus needs to know his prophecy for the rest of his journey. Therefore, he leaves Circe at Aea, and then he goes to the land of the dead, which is where Hades is located. Okay, this is where the underworld is. And so this is where we're going to pick up with the land of the dead. And you have to have an imagination for this episode because in order to get to the underworld, it's not like Percy Jackson. It's not at the Hollywood sign, and it just doesn't magically open for you. Odysseus has to actually dig a votive pit and then pour a bunch of what we call libations into it, like oils and milk and wine. And he even has to slash like a lamb and put the blood in there, let it swirl around. And then all the spirits conjure up around him, and boom, he's in the underworld. Okay? So you got to have an imagination. All right, so let's start reading. So we bore down on the ship at the sea's edge and launched her on the salt and immortal sea, stepping our mast and spar in the black ship, embarked the ram and ewe and went aboard in tears with bitter and sore dread upon us. Now it's important to know that Odysseus is very dreadful of this because he's your cocky, arrogant, epic hero, yet he's dreading this journey. Why? He's going to the underworld. It's kind of scary, and it's important that he's admitting that it's scary. But now a breeze came up for us astern, a canvas-bellying land breeze, hell's shipmate sent by the singing nymph with sun-bright hair. So we made fast the braces, took our thwarts, and let the wind and steersman work the ship with full sail spread all day above our coursing, till the sun dipped and all the ways grew dark upon the fathomless, unresting sea. By night our ship ran onward toward the ocean's bourne, the realm and region of the men of winter, hidden in mist and cloud. Never the flaming eye of Helios lights on those men at morning when he climbs the sky of stars. Nor in descending earthward out of heaven, ruinous night being rove over those wretches. We made the land, put ram and ewe ashore, and took our way along the ocean stream to find the place foretold to us by Circe. There Perimedes and Eurylochus pinion the sacred beasts. All right, so here he is. He's about to dig a votive pit, which is really just kind of like a big old hole in the ground. And here's what he's about to pour in there. With my drawn blade, I spaded up the votive pit and poured libations round it to the unnumbered dead. Sweet milk and honey, then sweet wine, and last clear water, and I scattered barley down. Then I addressed the blurred and breathless dead, vowing to slaughter my best heifer for them before she calved at home in Ithaca, and burn the choice bits on the altar fire. As for Tiresias, I swore to sacrifice a black lamb, handsomest of our flock. Thus to assuage the nations of the dead, I pledged these rites and slashed the lamb and ewe, letting their black blood stream into the well pit. All right, now he's about to talk about what kind of souls are conjuring up around him. Now these souls gathered, stirring out of Erebus, brides and young men, and men grown old in pain, and tender girls whose hearts were new to grief. Many were there too, torn by brazen lance heads, battle slain, bearing still their bloody gear. From every side they came and sought the pit with rustling cries, and I grew sick with fear. Why is it important that Odysseus tells us that he grows sick with fear? Do what? Yes, because he's our hero. Like, heroes aren't supposed to get scared. Also, he's a man. Men aren't supposed to get scared either, just like men aren't supposed to cry or show emotion. Odysseus does quite the opposite here, and it says a lot that he says he was fearful. It says he was scared. So here we have our epic hero, who is our cocky, arrogant, smart, main character hero here, and he is saying he's scared. So it does show you that, hey, yes, there are some times in situations where you can be scared. But presently I gave command to my officers to flay those sheep, the bronze cut down, and make burnt offerings of flesh to the gods below, to sovereign death, to pale Persephone. Meanwhile I crouched with my drawn sword to keep the surging phantoms from the bloody pit, till I should know the presence of Tiresias. One shade came first. All right, so he's going to encounter 3 people that we read in this abridged version. There's actually more in the unabridged. But in this abridged version, he's going to encounter 3 people, 2 of which he was not expecting to see in the underworld. So this first one is going to be Elpenor, his shipmate. One shade came first, Elpenor of our company, who lay unburied still on the wide earth as we had left him, dead in Circe's hall, untouched, unmourned, when other cares compelled us. Now when I saw him there, I wept for pity and called out to them, "How is this, Elpenor? How could you journey to the western gloom swifter of foot than I in the black lugger?" He sighed and answered, "Son of great Laertes, Odysseus, master and mariner and soldier, Bad luck shadowed me, and no kindly power. Ignoble death I drank with so much wine. I slept on Circe's roof, then could not see the long steep backward ladder coming down, and fell that height. My neck bone buckled under, snapped, and my spirit found this well of dark. Now hear the grace I pray for in the name of those back in the world not here, your wife and father, he who gave you bread in childhood, and your own child, your only son Telemachus, long ago left at home. All right, so how does Elpenor get to the underworld? Odysseus didn't know he was dead. He had a quick death on Circe's island of Aeaea. What does Elpenor say happened to him? Yes, he drank too much wine, crawled up on Circe's roof, fell asleep, and then when he tried to get off the roof, he missed a step on a ladder, fell, and broke his neck. Right? All right, that's not a very noble death. But one problem here is that Elpenor was not buried properly, which was a big deal during this time. So you wanted to have a proper burial. You want to have the corn in your mouth so you can pay the undertaker to cross the river Styx when you get into the underworld. So here Elpenor is about to ask Odysseus, hey, can you please go back to Aeaea, where Circe's house is, and give me a proper burial at least? Can you be that respectful for me, friend? All right. When you make sail and put these lodgings of dim death behind, you will moor ship, I know, upon Aeaea Island. There, O my lord, remember me, I pray. Do not abandon me unwept, unburied, to tempt the gods' wrath while you sail for home. But fire my corpse and all the gear I had, and build a cairn for me above the breakers, an unknown sailor's mark for men to come. Heap up the mounds there, and implant upon it the oar I pulled in life with my companions. He ceased, and I replied, unhappy spirit, I promise you the barrow and the burial. All right, so what does Odysseus say to Elpenor when he asks for him to go back and bury him properly? Oh yeah, he makes a promise to do it, and that's the loyalty to crew. All right, so that shows the epic hero trait of loyalty to crew. So he asks Odysseus, go back, burn my body, and out of my ashes make a monument with rocks, so to warn other sailors not to stop here. And Odysseus says, I promise the barrow and the burial, which is a very famous line in this epic. Promises were a big deal then, right? You did not break them. Unlike people now. I feel like promises are easily broken these days. All right, so now moving on. So he moves on from Elpenor, and now he is about to see someone else that he did not know was in the underworld, and he is completely shocked. He be shook. Is that what y'all say? He shook. Thy shooketh. All right. So we conversed and grimly at a distance with my long sword between, guarding the blood, while the faint image of the lad spoke on. Now came the soul of Anticlea, dead, my mother, daughter of Antilochus, dead now, though living still when I took ship for holy Troy. Seeing this ghost I grieved, but held her off through pang on pang of tears, till I should know the presence of Tiresias. So who did he just see? He just saw his mother. His mother was alive when he left for Troy, and now she is dead. She's in the underworld, and he had no idea. And so this shows the epic hero trait of bravery, because what does he want to do? Like, if he sees his mom, he hasn't seen her in years, and now he's seeing her in the underworld, what's he want to run up to her and do? Hug her. And he can't hug her. Yes, Isaiah. How many years has it been since he's been home? Probably about 15. Yeah, so at this point, it's probably about, I would say like 13 or 15 years. Because we find out later with Calypso, I think he stays with Calypso for about 5 or 7. I'd have to look. So yeah, he's been away from home for a while, but his mother actually, she died of grief because she thought that Odysseus would have been dead. So she actually walked into the ocean and drowned herself because she thought that maybe perhaps she could see Odysseus in the underworld. And turns out she did. He's just actually mortal and he's alive. He's not a dead soul. All right, but it does take the epic hero trait of bravery because he fights off these tears. And again, that's another standard that society says now, hey, men should not cry. But here we are again. We have our arrogant, strong, cocky hero who's shedding tears over his mother. And Homer and Odysseus are saying, you know what, men, it's okay to cry sometimes. All right, moving on. So now we got to find Tiresias, the prophet, the blind prophet. Which actually, Tiresias, the blind prophet, this was Homer's way of writing himself into the epic because Homer, remember, was blind himself. And so it's kind of like how Stan Lee kind of puts a little small cameo of himself in his films. I know, rip Stan Lee. But this is Homer making a little cameo appearance for himself. He's Tiresias, the blind prophet. All right, here we go. Soon from the dark, that prince of Thebes came forward, bearing a golden staff, and he addressed me. Son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master of landways and seaways, why leave the blazing sun, O man of woe, to see the cold dead in the joyless region? Stand clear, put up your sword. Let me but taste of blood, I shall speak true. So he's like, Odysseus, put your sword up. Just cut the sheep and let me taste the blood, and I'll tell you what you want to hear. Because remember, Odysseus is making a sacrifice for Tiresias. He has a black sheep with him. At this I stepped aside, and in the scabbard let my long sword ring home to the pommel silver as he bent down to the somber blood, then spoke, the prince of those with gift of speech. All right, so now, here's Odysseus's prophecy. Here's what's going to happen to him. Great captain, a fair wind and the honey lights of home are all you seek. So you just want to get home, Odysseus. But anguish lies ahead, danger lies ahead. The god who thunders on the land prepares it. Which god is that? Yeah, Zeus. Not to be shaken from your track, implacable in rancor for the son whose eye you blinded. Now one narrow strait may take you through his blows, denial of yourself, restraint of shipmates. So what Tiresias is saying here is, I know you want to get home, but in order to get home, you're going to have to go back by the Cyclops who is waiting to kill you. And so you're going to have to go through a narrow strait of water, and it's going to be tough to get through it. But if you want to avoid the Cyclops, you better go this way. You're going to have to deny yourself in the process and restrain your shipmates. And Odysseus doesn't know what this means at the time, but he does find out later before he gets there what it means. When you make landfall on Thrinacia first and quit the violet sea, dark on the land, you'll find the grazing herds of Helios, by whom all things are seen, all speech is known. Avoid those kind, hold fast to your intent, and hard seafaring brings you all to Ithaca. So after you get through that narrow strait, you're going to go to Thrinacia, which is where Helios's cattle live. He says, whatever you do, avoid those kind. Kind is cattle. So he says, avoid the cattle. Don't eat them. All right. If you don't eat them, everybody will survive and you'll make it home. However, here he goes, if you do eat them, but if you raid the beeves, I see destruction for ship and crew. Though you survive alone, bereft of all companions, lost for years, under strange sail shall you come home to find your own house filled with trouble. Insolent men eating your livestock as they court your lady. So basically, if your men eat Helios's cattle, then what? Yes, all of the men will die. All of your crew will die. You will survive alone, and then you will continue to be lost for more years. And then once you do finally get home, you're going to find a bunch of men eating all of your food and trying to marry your wife. And y'all, that makes Odysseus so mad. You shall make those men atone in blood. So Tiresias said, what are you going to do to those men? Yeah, you're going to kill them because you're so mad. But after you have dealt out death in open combat or by stealth to all the suitors, go overland on foot and take an oar, until one day you come where men have lived with meat unsalted, never known the sea, nor seen sea-going ships with crimson bows and oars that fledge like holes for dipping flight. The spot will soon be plain to you, and I can tell you how. Some passerby will say, what winnowing fan is that upon your shoulder? Halt and implant your smooth oar in the turf, and make fair sacrifice to Lord Poseidon, a ram, a bull, a great buck boar. Turn back and carry out pure hecatombs at home to all wide heaven's lords. So he says it'll be very obvious when you have to thank Poseidon, because somebody's going to come up and say, what winnowing fan is that upon your shoulder? You're going to drop what you're doing. You're going to plant your oar in the surf of the ocean, and you're going to thank Poseidon. Then you're going to turn around, and you're going to go home, and you're going to burn a sacrifice and pray to every single one of the gods. All right, and you're just making amends with all of them. Then a sea-born death, soft as this hand of mist, will come upon you when you are wearied out with rich old age, your country folk, and blessed peace around you, and all this shall be just as I foretell. So if you listen to me, Odysseus, your prophecy and your future will turn out just like this. And in the unabridged version, your textbook leaves out another person of importance that Odysseus meets. And remember the Trojan War? King Menelaus, it's his wife that was kidnapped, Helen. Y'all remember this? And his brother's named Agamemnon. Y'all remember him? Well, actually, Agamemnon has died. His wife killed him when he got home from the war. And so Agamemnon runs into Odysseus in the underworld too. And Agamemnon warns Odysseus, hey, you better make sure your wife has been faithful to you while you're gone, or else when you come home, she will kill you. Because Agamemnon's wife had a lover while he was gone to war. And so when Agamemnon came back, she killed him so she could be with her lover. And so Odysseus now has this fear that if Penelope has cheated on him with anyone else, then he will have to kill her. Which, again, is the double standard, because Odysseus has been with Circe, the sorceress goddess, and then he will, in a few more episodes, be with Calypso. And nobody tries to, and Penelope, his wife, won't try to kill him when he comes home. All right? So there's that double standard. And that's why Odysseus has in his head that when he gets home, he may have to kill his wife Penelope if she has not been faithful to him. Because Agamemnon warned him. All right. So who does Odysseus see in the land of the dead, and why is Odysseus there? So 3 people from your textbook. Who's the first person he sees? Yeah, he sees his crewmate Elpenor. Secondly, he sees his mother, Euryclea. No, Anticlea. Just kidding. Anticlea. Euryclea is her servant. And then lastly, he sees Tiresias, the blind prophet. And so why is Odysseus there in the underworld to begin with? Yes, to see what the rest of his journey is going to look like, to get the prophecy from Tiresias. All right, and so after Odysseus and his men, after they leave the underworld, they go back to Circe's island, and then she tells them about other things that forecome, that are to come. And then we'll pick up there with the sirens.